And then these people will just take pot shots at them. They'll throw things, bottles, all this other stuff, and you're just like a sitting duck. So we did anti-riot legislation in Florida, which says if you're engaged in mob violence, if you're engaged in rioting or looting, you're not getting a slap on the wrist. You're going to jail in the state of Florida, and you're going to pay the price.
As Ron DeSantis had back-to-back stops highlighting his support for law enforcement, first in New York, then Elmhurst, Illinois. Most notably, he's not in Manchester, New Hampshire, or Des Moines, Iowa, but he is doing everything to say he's running for president without actually saying it. He's picking fights that get him national attention. He's raising big money from traditional Republican donors. He's writing a book that comes out later this month entitled The Courage to Be Free, $28 on Amazon or $50 if you want it autographed. And Republicans, not all Republicans, we should say, love the strategy. GOP impatience grows for DeSantis to make the move on Trump, writes The Hill. The DeSantis they know tells a different story. Selena Zito's piece in the Washington Examiner lays out a profile of the candidate DeSantis wants to be. Everybody from the New York Post to Axios picked up the reporting in part because of how rarely DeSantis speaks on record to a single reporter. Chris Stirewalt will be here in a minute, but first, Brian Entin in DeSantis' home state of Florida, where law enforcement built a tent city in the Florida Keys. There's a state of emergency to deal with the migrants that are coming across from Haiti and Cuba on the boats to the Keys. Brian, how much is the law enforcement at this camp really doing?
Yeah, it's interesting. They call it a base camp here. This is the base camp behind me. It's probably, 6 or 7 acres here. Essentially, this is the busiest time of year for tourists. President's Day weekend, all of the hotels are full. So they had to set up this base camp so they'd have a place for both the National Guard and the state troopers to sleep and to rest, because he's got so many of them down here helping the feds with this migrant crisis right now. The migrants coming over about double what we've seen in past years, Leland.
Who's paying for it all?
It's a good question. He has partly federal money that he got that they're using. Also, the county is chipping in, and the state also, from what I'm told, about $10 million or so for all this.
Okay. And in terms of this response, is this a solution in search of a problem in the Florida Keys so Ron DeSantis can talk about what he's done to address the border crisis? Or is there a legitimate problem that requires all of this extra law enforcement?
Well, that right there is the conversation happening with all these neighborhoods around me. You've been down to the Keys. It's beautiful here. This time of year is when they make all their money with the tourists coming in. Almost everyone I talked to today said that they are a Ron DeSantis supporter, but many of them sort of question, with the base camp now set up in their neighborhood, whether this is all really worth it. I mean, they're like, yeah, we know there's more migrants coming, but did we really need all of this? There were definitely some people who wondered whether this was almost for attention, almost for the publicity, wondering if this all goes back to DeSantis trying to get more attention nationwide.
Oh, he's certainly getting the attention nationwide. Brian Entin in the Florida Keys. Brian, thank you. With that, we bring. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.